Hello, and welcome. Today, we are going to talk about one of the oldest and most extraordinary civilizations in the history of the world, China. China has a continuous history of more than 4,000 years. It gave the world paper, printing, gunpowder, the compass, silk, and so much more. Today, it is home to 1.4 billion people and is one of the most powerful countries on Earth. Let us start from the very beginning. The story of China begins along two great rivers, the Yellow River in the north and the Yangtze River in the south. Around 2000 BC, early Chinese civilization began to grow in the Yellow River Valley. The Chinese people call the Yellow River the Mother River because it gave water, food, and life to the first Chinese communities. The First Dynasty. A dynasty is a series of rulers from the same family that historians are fairly sure existed was the Qing Dynasty, which ruled from about 1600 to 1046 BC. The Shang people were skilled bronze workers and created beautiful metal objects. They also developed one of the world's earliest writing systems, using symbols carved on animal bones to ask questions of the gods. These are called oracle bones, and some of these symbols are the ancestors of the Chinese characters used today. After the Shang came the Zhou Dynasty, which lasted for nearly 800 years, the longest dynasty in Chinese history. During the Zhou period, China was not one unified country, but a collection of many small states that often fought each other. But this period also produced some of the greatest thinkers in Chinese history. Around 500 BC, during a time of great political conflict called the Warring States period, several extraordinary thinkers appeared in China. The most famous was a man named Confucius, who lived from 551 to 479 BC. Confucius was a teacher and philosopher. He believed that society works best when people treat each other with respect and kindness, when children honor their parents, when rulers govern fairly, and when everyone fulfills their responsibilities. These ideas are called Confucianism, and they shaped Chinese culture, government, and family life for over 2,000 years. Even today, Confucian values are deeply present in Chinese society. Another important thinker of this period was Laozi, the founder of Taoism. Taoism teaches that people should live in harmony with nature and the natural flow of the universe, called the Tao, which means the way. A third major philosophy was legalism, which believed in strict laws and strong government control. Each of these philosophies had a very different vision for how China should be organized, and rulers throughout history chose different ones to follow. After centuries of small states fighting each other, one state finally conquered all the others. In 221 BC, the king of the Qing state united all of China under one ruler for the first time. His name was Yingzhong, but he gave himself a new title, Qin Shi Huang, which means First Emperor of Qin. China's name in many languages, including English, comes from the word Qin. Qin Shi Huang was a powerful and very strict ruler. He standardized, which means he made the same across the whole country, the writing system, the currency, weights and measures, and even the width of roads and wheels. This helped unify the country and made trade and communication much easier. He also connected and expanded earlier walls along the northern border to protect against nomadic invaders from the north. This was an early version of what would eventually become the Great Wall of China. But Qin Shi Huang was also feared. He burned books he did not like and buried alive scholars who disagreed with him. He was obsessed with living forever and sent people to search for potions of immortality. He never found them. He died in 210 BC. Qin Shi Huang was buried in a massive tomb, guarded by one of the most extraordinary discoveries in history, the Terracotta Army. This is a collection of over 8,000 life-sized clay soldiers, each with a unique face, buried to protect the emperor in the afterlife. The Terracotta Army was discovered by farmers in 1974 and is now one of the most visited archaeological sites in the world. The Qing Dynasty lasted only 15 years after the emperor's death, but the next dynasty, the Han Dynasty, lasted over 400 years, from 206 BC to 220 AD. The Han period is considered one of the greatest eras in Chinese history, and even today, the majority ethnic group in China calls itself the Han people. Under the Han Dynasty, China became very powerful and prosperous. The Emperor Wu Di expanded the empire's territory greatly, pushing into Central Asia and making China a dominant force in the region. Trade flourished along what became known as the Silk Road, a network of trade routes that connected China to Central Asia, the Middle East, and eventually Europe. Along the Silk Road, China exported silk, porcelain, and tea, and received gold, glass, and new crops in return. Ideas, religions, and cultures also traveled along these routes. During the Han period, paper was invented, one of the most important inventions in human history. Before paper, people wrote on bamboo strips or silk, which were heavy and expensive. Paper made writing and record-keeping much easier and cheaper. The Han Dynasty also created a system where government officials were chosen through exams based on knowledge and ability, rather than simply by birth. This was a remarkably modern idea, a merit-based civil service, and it lasted in China for nearly 2,000 years. After the Han Dynasty collapsed in 220 AD, China split into several competing kingdoms and went through centuries of division and conflict. But in 581 AD, a general named Yang Jian reunified China and founded the Sui Dynasty. The Sui Dynasty was short but very productive. It built the Grand Canal, a massive waterway connecting northern and southern China that allowed goods and food to be transported easily across the country. Parts of this canal are still used today. After the Sui came one of the greatest dynasties in Chinese history, the Tang Dynasty, which lasted from 618 to 907 AD. The Tang period is often called China's true golden age. The capital city, Chang'an, modern-day Xi'an, was the largest city in the world at that time, with over 1 million people. It was a cosmopolitan city, welcoming traders, diplomats, monks, and artists from across Asia and beyond. During the Tang Dynasty, Chinese poetry reached its highest point. Poets like Li Bai and Du Fu are still read and loved in China today, over 1,000 years later. Buddhism became extremely popular across China. Block printing was developed, a way of printing text by carving words into wooden blocks and pressing them onto paper. This was a huge step towards spreading knowledge more widely. After a period of division, the Song Dynasty reunified much of China in 960 AD and ruled until 1279. The Song period was a time of remarkable technological innovation. 3 of the most important inventions in world history came from China during this era: gunpowder, movable type printing, and the magnetic compass. Gunpowder had been discovered earlier, but during the Song Dynasty it was developed into weapons, rockets, bombs, and early guns. This technology eventually reached Europe and changed warfare forever. Movable type printing, where individual characters can be rearranged to print different texts, was developed by a man named Bai Sheng around 1040 AD, about 400 years before Gutenberg invented a similar system in Europe. And the magnetic compass, used for navigation at sea, helped make long ocean voyages possible, including eventually the voyages of European explorers to the Americas. The Song Dynasty also saw the growth of a large middle class, busy cities, and a thriving economy. However, the Song faced constant military pressure from northern nomadic peoples. Eventually, a new and terrifying force appeared from the north, the Mongols. In the early 1200s, Genghis Khan united the Mongol tribes of Central Asia and began one of the greatest military conquests in history. The Mongols swept across Asia and into Europe, destroying cities and defeating army after army. China was not spared. After decades of fighting, Genghis Khan's grandson Kublai Khan completed the conquest of China in 1279 and established the Yuan dynasty, the first time all of China was ruled by a foreign people. Kublai Khan ruled from a magnificent capital called Canbalik, modern-day Beijing. Despite being a conqueror, Kublai Khan was interested in Chinese culture and governed using many Chinese traditions. He also welcomed foreign visitors. The most famous was a Venetian merchant named Marco Polo, who traveled to China around 1275 and spent many years at Kublai Khan's court. When Marco Polo returned to Europe, his descriptions of China's wealth, cities, and technology astonished everyone. Many Europeans did not believe his stories. China seemed too advanced, too rich, too extraordinary to be real. The Yuan dynasty lasted less than a century. The Mongols were never fully accepted by the Chinese people, and rebellions eventually drove them out. In 1368, a Chinese rebel leader founded a new dynasty. The Ming dynasty ruled China from 1368 to 1644 and is famous for several extraordinary achievements. The most iconic is the Great Wall of China. While walls had existed in China for centuries, it was during the Ming Dynasty that the Great Wall was mostly built in the form we recognize today, a massive stone and brick structure stretching thousands of kilometers across northern China, with watchtowers, gates, and barracks for soldiers. It is one of the most impressive construction projects in human history. The Ming Dynasty also built the Forbidden City in Beijing, a vast palace complex of nearly 1,000 buildings, surrounded by high walls and a moat, where the emperor lived and governed. Ordinary people were not allowed inside, hence the name Forbidden City. It is now one of the most visited tourist sites in the world. In the early 1400s, the Ming Emperor sent out an extraordinary fleet of ships on a series of voyages across Asia, Arabia, and the east coast of Africa. These were led by a Muslim admiral named Zheng He, whose largest ships were among the biggest wooden ships ever built. These voyages showed China's power and established trade connections across the Indian Ocean. But after Zheng He's death, the voyages stopped. China turned inward, and this decision would have important consequences for the future. In 1644, the Ming Dynasty fell to another group from the north, the Manchu people, who established the Qing Dynasty. The Qing ruled China until 1912, making it the last imperial dynasty in Chinese history. Under early Qing emperors, China reached its largest territorial size ever and remained one of the wealthiest countries in the world. But from the 1800s onward, China began to face serious problems. European powers, especially Britain, wanted to trade with China. China had tea, silk, and porcelain that Europeans wanted desperately. But China was not interested in most European goods. Britain found a solution that was deeply immoral. They began selling opium, a highly addictive drug, to Chinese people. Millions became addicted. When China tried to stop the opium trade, Britain fought two wars, called the Opium Wars, and won both. China was forced to give up territory, open ports to foreign trade, and pay huge amounts of money. The city of Hong Kong was given to Britain. These humiliating defeats deeply wounded Chinese national pride and began a period that Chinese historians call the Century of Humiliation. Internal rebellions also tore the country apart. The Taiping Rebellion from 1850 to 1864 was one of the deadliest civil wars in history, killing an estimated 20 to 30 million people. The Qing Dynasty was weakening rapidly. In 1911, a revolution ended over 2,000 years of imperial rule in China. A doctor and political leader named Sun Yat-sen became the first president of the new Republic of China. But the new republic was unstable. Warlords, military leaders who controlled different regions, fought each other for power. Japan invaded and occupied large parts of China in the 1930s, committing terrible atrocities against the Chinese population. Inside China, two political groups were fighting for control: the Nationalist Party, led by Chiang Kai-shek, and the Communist Party, led by Mao Zedong. They briefly united to fight Japan, but after World War II ended in 1945, their civil war resumed. In 1949, Mao Zedong's communist forces won. Chiang Kai-shek and his followers fled to the island of Taiwan. On October 1, 1949, Mao Zedong stood in Tiananmen Square in Beijing and declared the founding of the People's Republic of China. Mao Zedong ruled China from 1949 until his death in 1976. His rule brought major changes. Land was taken from wealthy landowners and given to the state. Industry was nationalized, and education was expanded. But his rule also caused enormous suffering. The Great Leap Forward, an economic campaign from 1958 to 1962, caused one of the worst famines in history, killing an estimated 15 to 55 million people. The Cultural Revolution from 1966 to 1976 attacked traditional culture, education, and religion, causing chaos and persecution across the country. After Mao's death, a new leader named Deng Xiaoping took power. Deng made a historic decision. He opened China's economy to market forces and foreign investment, while keeping the Communist Party in political control. This combination of communist politics and capitalist economics was unique, and it produced spectacular results. China's economy began growing at an extraordinary rate, one of the fastest in history. Over the following decades, hundreds of millions of Chinese people were lifted out of poverty. China became the world's largest manufacturer and exporter. Cities like Shanghai and Shenzhen transformed from small towns into enormous modern metropolises in just a few decades. In 2001, China joined the World Trade Organization. In 2008, Beijing hosted the Olympic Games, a moment of enormous national pride. Today, China is the world's second-largest economy and a major global power in politics, technology, and trade. So what has China given to the world? The list is long and remarkable. First, inventions. Paper, printing, gunpowder, the compass, silk, porcelain. All of these came from China. Without paper and printing, the spread of knowledge across the world would have been much slower. Without the compass, ocean navigation would have been far more difficult. Without gunpowder, the history of warfare and exploration would have looked very different. Second, philosophy. Confucianism shaped not just China but also Korea, Japan, Vietnam, and much of East Asia. Ideas about respect, education, hard work, and social harmony that come from Confucius are still influential across the world today. Third, the Silk Road. China's trade routes connected the ancient world, allowing goods, ideas, religions, and technologies to flow between East and West for centuries. This network of exchange shaped civilizations from China to Rome. Fourth, architecture and art. The Great Wall, the Forbidden City, ancient temples and pagodas, Chinese painting, calligraphy, and ceramics represent thousands of years of artistic achievement that have influenced cultures across Asia and beyond. Fifth, food and culture. Chinese cuisine is one of the most popular in the world. Chinese festivals, like the Lunar New Year, are celebrated by hundreds of millions of people globally. And Chinese language, Mandarin, is the most spoken language in the world by number of native speakers. We began with early settlements along the Yellow River more than 4,000 years ago. Then came the first dynasties, great philosophers, the first emperor, the Han Golden Age, the Tang Renaissance, remarkable inventions, Mongol conquest, the Ming Wall and fleet, and then centuries of Qing rule and painful contact with European powers. Then revolution, civil war, communist rule, and finally one of the most dramatic economic transformations in history. China's story is one of extraordinary continuity, a civilization that has lasted longer than almost any other on Earth, and also of dramatic change. It is a story of great achievements and great suffering, of isolation and openness, of ancient tradition and rapid modernization. Today, China stands at the center of the world stage again, as it has for much of human history. Understanding China means understanding the world we live in. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I hope this helped you learn something new about history, about China, and about English. See you in the next lesson. Goodbye.